ये अमित का सवाल है, does the current Israel state regime stand as fascist by any norm? I think it does, given their racist, Islamophobic propaganda, expansionist approach, and warmongering. But the question I want to ask is, how does this racist Israel state uh, is able to get away without need for any disguise? As Hindu extremists and others use nationalism and democracy to hide their ideology motives. How are they able to massacre thousands of Palestinians so openly? Why have people around the world failed to call out fascist as fascist? Can only Islamophobia as a phenomena explain this completely?
I'm expressing my own opinion here from whatever I've studied about this project which is called Israel. First of all, it's not a nation, it's not a country. It's a settler colonial project based on arch chauvinist, racist ideology of Zionism, which is a political, it has nothing to do with Jews. In fact, there is sufficient evidence to show that the early Zionists were in cohorts with the Nazis. There is more evidence to show that they had been in touch with the Nazis before they came to power. So in my opinion, we have to understand Israel as a very specific social formation. It's a settler colonial project in the specific conjuncture created after the Second World War. The overall world-class political situation was different. Now these kinds of colonial massacres would not take place in the same way in which certain settler colonial projects had done in the 17th or 18th century, right? For example, the extermination of the Australian Aboriginal people, or near extermination of the US Aboriginal population, that it could not, and it was bound to take a different shape. It could not take the same shape as the early colonial voyages or something like that. It was situated in the particular framework of the needs of so we have to understand it as a very peculiar phenomenon. It's a settler colonial project in the specific world-class political situation or conjuncture which came into existence after the Second World War, even though the sprouting or embryonic beginnings of the project can be traced back to Herzl, late 19th century, the father of Zionism. But as an actual materialized political project, it is the product of a very different kind of class conjuncture at the international level. One. Two, yes, it has quasi-fascist elements. Yes, it has religious fundamentalist, or not religious fundamentalist, Islamophobic as a particular chauvinist ideology project. It has all those elements because many of the Zionists, and Zionism is a spectrum. Within the Israeli politics, nothing is outside of the Zionism. Even the Social Democratic Party of Israel is within that spectrum. The left of Zionism, you can talk about the extreme left of the Zionism. You can talk about the center left of the Zionism. You can talk about the center of Zionism. You can talk about the center right of Zionism. You can talk about the right and far right of Zionism. But Zionism as a whole is a reactionary, chauvinistic, settler colonial ideology designed to serve the interest first, because the mandate of Palestine, Balfour Declaration 1917, and then from there on it shifted its loyalties to the new hegemon of the northwestern imperialism, US, after the Second World War. But it is basically, as in Hindi we would call, ये अमेरिकी साम्राज्यवाद का लठायत है, and it can get away with massacres of this scale. And not only the number is not, numbers are definitely important, but it is not only the number of the Palestinians killed important. It's the systematic dehumanization and brutalization of the Palestinian people, including its children and newborns. That is the most disturbing thing. They can get, now there are two ways of looking at it. Are they getting away with it politically, which talks about the immediate conjuncture? Yes, they are getting away with it politically. Historically, I don't think they are getting away with it. It is going to end. This settler colonial project will end. Pentagon's report says that internal report says that by 2030 the Israeli settler colonial project will become totally unsustainable for imperialism. Even during this war, not war, one-sided genocide, but also the resistance of the Palestinian people. If you look at the people, because most of the Israelis they have two passports. They never gave up all the Ashkenazi Jews. They never gave up their original nationality. Hundreds and thousands of Israelis went back to their countries from where they had settled into Israel. Israeli society, politics and political economy is dealing with a terminal crisis. Now when this terminal crisis comes to an end, we can't speculate about this, but it is going to come to an end, that is for certain. So they are not getting away with it, and people around the world, see, they are living within different nation states or multinational states. They cannot go and fight there, but there are people who are willing to sacrifice their lives. Hundreds and thousands of medical practitioners, nurses from Western Europe and America, they went there to serve as doctors, and you must have heard about the Mads Gilbert, the Norwegian doctor. There are so many. It's like globalization is the globalization of capital, not globalization of labor. So you can't just go across national boundaries. But I think people stand together with the people of Palestine, all the people in the world except few countries. In India also, it is not simply Islamophobia. We are one of the initiators of BDS movement in India. It's called Indian People in Solidarity with Palestine. It is the Indian BDS movement, boycott, divestment and sanctions. And during our mass campaigns in the lower middle class and middle class colonies about the issue during the previous wars imposed upon Gaza, we were astonished to see the low level of consciousness about it. And the more we were able to make the people conscious about the systematic brutalization and dehumanization of Palestinian people, most of the people supported our argument. Most of the people. They said कि नहीं ये तो गलत हो रहा है, ये गलत है, इसके खिलाफ बोलना चाहिए, आप लोग बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं. So it is also about the low level of awareness and consciousness about the Palestinian issue in India. At one time there was a better level of consciousness in India, but especially in the new economic policies and all, and the shift of Indian foreign policy, the change in the tone of Indian state, ideological state apparatuses and informal state apparatuses, the overall consciousness about the Palestinian issue went down. So I think they are not getting away with it. They have certain elements of fascism and quasi-fascism and racist, chauvinist, Zionist ideologies, a particular blend of many, it's an ensemble of many reactionary elements from different far-right ideologies. So, but it's not a fascist, as we understand fascism, it is not a fascist person, because there is no cadre-based organization. One is most of these parties have quasi-cadre. Likud, for example, has a quasi-cadre-based organization in Israel. But it's a very different thing. It's very difficult to explain, but it's not historical fascism. It's not contemporary fascism. It is a peculiar thing. We have to understand it on its own terms.